115,000 jobs, which is important. We have created nearly 10,000 million jobs since President Biden took office, which is the fastest job growth in history. So you're asking me, where's the success? Here it is.
Well, that was White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre during Friday's briefing saying the Biden administration has created 10,000 million jobs. And she was looking at her notes while saying that 10,000 million, that's an impressive number. Maybe that's because it's not real. However, it didn't get any play on the Sunday shows, not a peep. Joining us to discuss is today's company, managing editor of Newsbusters at the Media Research Center, Curtis Houck, and Washington editor of The Spectator and host of Unfit to Print, Amber Athey. Welcome to the show to both of you. Thanks for having us.
Curtis, I gotta say, I mean, you guys at Newsbusters and the Media Research Center cover this stuff real close. I would think if you're going to create 10,000 million jobs, that's something that should be covered. I mean, how does the media miss creating this many jobs? I mean, that's amazing. It's the thing. I mean, in all seriousness, though, a week ago, she talks about no one walks over the southern border. She's looking at her notes and says 10,000 million people got jobs. And nothing seems to ever get covered on the shows. Like, they don't even seem to acknowledge the gaffes. As somebody who got covered a bit, why do you think that is?
Well, this is the perfect reason, advertisement for why affirmative action hires don't work, Sean. I wonder sometimes if Karine Jean-Pierre is like a secret plant to make Joe Biden seem like a Rhodes Scholar. Between, Karine Jean-Pierre and John Fetterman, Joe Biden sounds pretty good right now. But no, it's really embarrassing. And her, claim about, 10,000 million jobs. Where are the fact checkers? That's what I have to say. Where's PolitiFact? Where's Glenn Kessler with his snarky take? Where's Daniel Dale? Or is he too busy tweeting about Toronto sports teams? Or is he too busy packing up his desk because Chris Licht's going to let him go? I don't know where in the world these people are. And that's the thing that's been crazy watching these White House press briefings. Basic questions from mainstream reporters, they come off like hardballs because Karine can't answer them. And she had this line the other day about it being Joe Biden's speech, calling half the country terrorists was going to be an optimistic speech. That's like asking Mrs. Lincoln other than that, how was the play?
Right. No, it's amazing. Where are the fact checkers? Amber, she was also on MSNBC yesterday. She was asked if President Biden owed the country an apology after calling all of the MAGA Republicans extreme. This is her response.
I'll say this. Look, the president was very clear. All you have to do, again, folks need to watch his speech, go read his speech. If you have it, it is powerful, it is impactful, and you will hear directly from the commander-in-chief what he was speaking to.
Okay, that might be true, but even Biden, when asked the day after speech, walked it back. So she's saying read the speech, and then when asked on Friday about his allegations about half of the country, Biden himself walked it back, and there Karine Jean-Pierre is saying, no, go back to the speech.
Yeah, exactly. There seems to be a constant mismatch in communication among the Biden administration officials where Biden says one thing, they try to clean it up, then Biden doubles down or vice versa, and nobody can seem to get their story straight. This was what happened when Biden infamously suggested that he was moving away from the strategic ambiguity policy in regards to China and Taiwan, and then his administration officials insisted that there was no change in the policy, and it just turned into basically an international relations disaster. And what's worse, I think, than Karine Jean-Pierre's gaffes is just the blatant dishonesty. Because even if you set aside the fact that maybe she misspoke when she said 1,000 million or whatever, the Biden administration didn't create jobs. The economy reopened after a global pandemic, right? So even just the fact that they're touting that as an accomplishment of administrative policy is so misleading.
That's right.
So Biden's advisor and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms was on ABC yesterday as well, where she deflected when she was asked about the speech. She told people, as you're talking about, Curtis, that it was extremely positive. It was such a positive speech. But when she was asked about Biden unifying the country, which he has said he would unify, here was her response to that.
How has President Biden bridged the divide? What has he done really to unify this country?
We saw it this summer when the president was able to work in a bipartisan way to get gun legislation passed. The president has always stood on the fact that he can work with mainstream Republicans to get things done on behalf of the American people.
All right, Curtis, there are many people who would say, in the Senate specifically, that this had nothing to do actually with Biden. It had everything to do with the Senate itself, them working together, yet he's taking credit for it.
Yeah, well, first of all, Keisha Lance Bottoms, yeah, it's nice to see her turn up after a real failure of a turn as the mayor of Atlanta. We know that was one of the cities hit hard by the Black Lives Matter shenanigans in summer of 2020, including CNN's headquarters. But leaving her aside, it is interesting. I think the Washington Post, Tyler Pager and Matt Visor, a few others wrote about this, how, yes, Joe Biden is on such a run of success. But then when you actually read the story, they note that he actually had nothing to do with any of this at all. Karine Jean-Pierre, couches this all, and we don't disclose his private conversations or his level of involvement. We allow the president to make calls and interact as he sees fit, when, what they're actually saying is he doesn't do anything. He's not involved at all in any of this. So regardless of whether you think the policies are good or not, I think we can all say, left or right, that Joe Biden had nothing to do with any of the pieces of legislation passed out of Congress this year. He's just merely the person who puts the piece of paper in front of him and signs it. He didn't even know probably he was signing that legislation. He just knew he had to put his signature on it. Then he gets to hand out pens.
Amber, one of the interesting things is I feel like this administration thought this was going to be such a winning speech, and now they're on their heels on it. They're on the defense because it came off so bad. The optics were terrible. You hear Karine Jean-Pierre there. You hear Keisha Lance Bottoms. All they can say is, go read the speech for yourself. I've read it several times. They're not defending it because they're not able to. Only about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the fact that they sent him out in front of this demonic-looking red building was just sort of the perfect backdrop for this the opposite of unifying speech that he gave. And I heard a lot of people on the left saying, well, Trump called people names. The difference is Trump talked about his political opponents and people in power. Joe Biden talks about the American populace.
All right, Curtis, Amber, thanks for being with us. Happy Labor Day.
Thanks.
You too.
Well, coming up, the United Kingdom is about to usher in a new prime minister. What does this mean for the U.S. relationship with our European ally? We'll discuss after the break. And Truss becomes the third woman to hold the position. Joining me now to discuss is global business consultant and British commentary, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, welcome to the show. All right, a big day for the UK. What can we expect from Truss as prime minister as she officially becomes a prime minister tomorrow?
Well, pleasure to be with you, Lindsay. A few things we can definitely expect, and that is a return to more conservative values. And for Americans, that's more like Republican values than the Republican Party. Boris Johnson, although he did have some positive attributes and certainly did, like Trump, he broke, in the UK, it's called the red wall. And in the UK, the colors are switched. In America, we're red for Republicans. In the UK, it's red for Labour, which is more equivalent to Democrats, far more left-leaning. He smashed that wall. He was able to get a lot of votes over from the other side. But he wasn't really a true conservative, Lindsay. For our audience, he was formerly the mayor of London, and he was very behind all of the green initiatives. You might remember that the UK chaired COP26, and that is the initiative. That was the event in Glasgow, Scotland, where all the global elites flew there on their private jets to talk about how concerned they were about global warming. So many issues like that. He was not viewed as a true conservative. He also raised taxes. And part of the issue is how bad the UK, the kind of situation it's in today, lots of fingers are pointed at him for policies that were far too liberal. So what we can expect in a nutshell for Liz Truss is a return to more conservative values. And she has said she thinks economic growth is far more important than economic distribution.
And obviously, the UK is also having record inflation as we are here at home. For our viewers here in the States, what will Truss mean for the U.S.-UK relationship?
Well, let's hope. We have our fingers crossed, and that is that she was, many may remember her, as a former trade minister. She closed 72 trade deals after Brexit with nations around the world, and she tried to get a trade deal done with the U.S. Of course, Biden is no great friend of the U.K. As part of the former Obama administration, Obama had said that the UK should get to the back of the line. in terms of doing any kind of trade deal. So the hope for the US and US farmers and UK farmers is to have a great trade deal. We still have a very special relationship. The UK is one of our greatest allies and has been throughout history. Let's hope for a great trade agreement.
So there has been some talk that Truss has created some fractured or said some fractured comments towards people, other party or leaders within the European Union, like French President Macron. Is that going to be an issue for her? Obviously, it's one of the UK's greatest allies.
Well, I have to say that she's actually not very loved by the EU at all. And that's because she's been very strident about Brexit. She originally, actually, interestingly enough, was a Remainer, meaning she wanted to remain in the EU. But she soon, once the Conservative Party stood behind Brexit, she did. She came on board. So I would say with regard to European leaders, she doesn't have a lot of great supporters there, but she has pledged already to stand behind the UK's pledge to the Ukraine in terms of supporting the war there, Zelensky, and she is going to be a very, well, let's just say UK first. Like we have America first, she'll be UK first. But there is great hope she'll repair a lot of those relationships within the EU. And she did get along pretty well with Barnier, who was the Brexit minister.
All right, Hillary, thanks for helping us give some insight into what Liz Truss will look like as the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Good to see you this evening.
Pleasure, Lindsay.
And speaking of Europe, Russia is turning up the heat as winter approaches. The Kremlin has announced that Russia will not resume gas supplies to the European Union until Western sanctions are lifted. And a Moscow spokesperson saying earlier today that the sanctions are to blame for their inability to deliver. So what does this mean for millions of Europeans and sanctions on Russia? Joining me now to discuss is energy strategist and EPA former principal deputy assistant, Mandy Gunasakara. Mandy, welcome to the show. All right, European gas prices are already up 400% from where they were a year ago. So things are not going well. We thought we were having issues here in the U.S. Russia is trying to use their supply as a bargaining chip to navigate their economic woes. Is this strategy going to work?
No, I don't think it will, but that doesn't take away the very real consequences that the people throughout the European Union are going to be feeling. And unfortunately, it's a result of years of leadership where leaders have chosen climate change policy over enhancing their own national security. We always knew that Vladimir Putin, if given the opportunity, would use energy as a geopolitical weapon, and that is exactly what's happening right now. Now, it's going to get hard, especially this winter. Folks are already having to choose between heat and food, and that's only going to get worse. But I don't believe ultimately it will work. The good news is that we do stand in a position to export energy to our allies abroad to help alleviate some of the consequences they are feeling. We just need Team Biden to get on board with the ability of U.S. oil and gas to help our allies abroad.
So Germany has actually been working to store up oil because they knew this was an issue with Russian oil. They had this November 1 deadline. They're at 84% actually, which is incredible. How much is that 16% deficit going to impact them?
Well, it will still seriously impact them, especially with regard to prices, but also with supply. So it's good to see that Germany is shifting course. The reality is that their push towards renewables was a flawed policy from the start. It is a less reliable source of energy, which unfortunately they're realizing today. Now shifting towards bulking up fossil-based energy sources like coal, oil, and to the extent they can get natural gas from elsewhere, that is what they need to get through this very dark and very hard time. But the deficit is certainly going to continue to effectuate the pain that Vladimir Putin is making worse by feigning technical problems with Nord Stream 2 or Nord Stream 1. But we know that really he's just using it as the geopolitical weapon we always knew that he would.
So the G7 countries last week agreed to cap Russian oil prices. But in order for this to work, many strategists say that countries like India and China will have to participate. China has already suggested that they won't. India says they're looking into it. So is this strategy of capping prices, is that a good strategy if you have countries who are already saying we're really not on board? Only about 30 seconds.
No, I think that is, they're trying to alleviate the price impacts to their residents. But I think with regard to undercutting Russia's influence, China is going to be there to capture the energy that they sell at a discount, as will India. So we're going to think much more broadly and much more strategically. But unfortunately, it's the citizens who will be bearing the consequences of these long-term flawed climate policies that have put Europe in the position that they are today.
An opportunity for the U.S. to kick up their oil production, only if Biden will allow it. Mandy, good to see you this evening. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Rates nearly doubled in the first half of the year. The Fitch Ratings service has raised the specter of a severe downturn that could send home prices tumbling. Housing starts plunged in July. Builder confidence has declined the most since the 2008 meltdown, and new home sales last month were down 30% from the previous year, they write. That's a lot to take in. Here to break down the state of play in the market and advice for buyers and sellers is Dustin Hook, one of the top real estate agents in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By the way, if you've attended a Dan and Shay concert, you might recognize him as the bass player. Dustin, good to see you.
Good to see you, Sean. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. You know, as I said, when you walk down the street, it seems pretty obvious that there's less inventory. Is that an accurate read of where the market is right now?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had low inventory for years now. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But in general, though, what's happening right now, we're actually starting to see a balance. Think of the last 2 years. It's just been, we're looking at 20, 30 offers on houses. That's starting to slow up a little bit. But, people see that, they use the term recession. Frankly, I see it as a positive because we're starting to balance out and we're starting to hit a healthy market now. Because, prior to 2 years ago, we didn't deal with the ridiculousness that we've had as of recent. So the nice thing is that with the balance in place, it enables a fair marketplace.
Dustin, the average right now, the average 30-year fixed rate for people who are looking at mortgages is just below 6%. A year ago, that same rate was 3.2%. So what does that mean if you're a potential home buyer?
Well, the buyers right now, I mean, in general, there's apprehension because of the rates the way they are. But if you look at the historic average of rates, I mean, 6%, 5% is not bad at all. It's actually still really, really strong in comparison. But the problem is that we've gotten adapted to this 2%, 2.5%, 3% rate. It's hard to stomach, if you were shopping a year ago and shopping still to this day, your payment's substantially greater. But the good news is that there's still such a high rate of buyers out there that, if your buyer got knocked down or rung in price point because of the increase in interest rate, there's still so many buyers that someone will fill their gaps. So with that in mind, I don't see our housing market in general really correcting all that much, just because there is still such strong demand. And as you know, it's a simple game of supply and demand in the real estate market. And the rates, they needed to come up all along. I just wish it didn't happen over a 3-month period of time. It should have happened over the last, 2 years progressively, little by little. But overnight, the way it has, I mean, it's going to create some panic. But I mean, we're still really strong here in our marketplace. And as I mentioned, historically, 6%, 5%, that's not really that bad. But I use the term often, marry the home, date the rates. Because, if you're shopping and you find the home of your dreams and you can afford it, regardless of the interest rate, lock it up. And then hopefully in time, the rates do correct and you can refinance. There's always ways to fix that part. But if you lose your dream home, you lose your dream home.
All right, so that's for the buyer. Let's pretend you're a seller right now. What advice would you give a seller?
Sellers right now, I mean, the reason that I think a lot of these averages and these statistics show that the market's going south is just because people are trying to grasp that last bit of, top tier market pricing. But all things considered, if you're a seller right now, I don't like the fact that a lot of sellers aren't doing the usual prep work that they should be doing. They're not doing the upgrades. They're not doing, all the things that really do appeal to buyers, because buyers in general are pretty discriminatory. They do want everything. They want everything done perfectly. That's why the new construction market did so well the last 2 years. But as you mentioned before we started talking, the new construction sector is starting to correct big time because, they just don't have the labor. They don't have the materials. And all they did was sign contract after contract, take deposit after deposit over the last, 2 years. And all of a sudden now, they can't meet their contracts. They can't meet the needs of the buyers. So there's going to be some adjustment for that, but that actually helps improve the resale market because, people still want to move right now. It's the American dream and always will be.
Let me ask you this. Lastly, how is all of this, if at all, affected the rental market? Because I keep hearing that a lot of rents have been driven up. So is that good for people who want to buy or sell, or does that make it harder?
I think it's great because, at the end of the day, even though a home is a home, it's still an investment. So if you decide to move on and purchase another property or move or relocate, if you hold that asset as an investment, rental rates are increasing pretty drastically. But the reason for that is, these rate increases, unfortunately, they're going to knock a big chunk of the buyer pool out of the qualification to purchase a home. So in turn, they're going to have to rent. And in turn, that's going to drive the rental rates up. But, not necessarily a bad thing to rent, but, like I said, I think the rates, that's always a temporary thing. And rate movement is actually really good for our marketplace because whether it's volatile or not, when rates just stand still for, years at a time or months, it gives kind of a complacency to buyers. They aren't as urgent. They're not as motivated. But if rates go up a little bit, buyers want to lock because they don't want to see them keep going up. If rates come down, they want to lock it because they're afraid they might go back up. So I like rate movement in general, regardless of where they're at.
Okay. Well, if I look for a house in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, you're my guy. Anyway, Dustin Hook, thank you for joining us and breaking it all down. I appreciate it.
Always good to see you. See you soon.
To give the most vicious, hateful, and divisive speech ever delivered by an American president, vilifying 75 million citizens. You're all enemies of the state. He's an enemy of the state. He thinks making America great again is a threat to our country. No, making America great again is great for our country. Republicans and the MAGA movement are not the ones trying to undermine our democracy. We are the ones trying to save our democracy. Very simple. Very simple. The danger to democracy comes from the radical left, not from the right.
Well, good Monday evening. Happy Labor Day. After a couple of weeks of being apart, we are back in the studio together. Welcome to Spicer & Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. It's good to be back in studio with you, Sean. Well, that was obviously former President Trump over the weekend, unleashing on President Biden, calling him an enemy of the state, Sean.
Yeah, of course, it was in response to Biden's primetime campaign infomercial last Thursday night, where he called Trump, and as Trump referenced there, all 75 million MAGA supporters a threat to democracy. Let's listen to what he had to say.
But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards. But I'm an American president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America.
Yeah, a president of all America that just bashes half of America. But I was thinking as we saw that, competing screens there, that this was Trump's first rally since he had his place raided at Mar-a-Lago. And I wonder if Biden is truly intent on running again, which I don't think he will. This is what it might look like, these competing narratives. Biden going on offense, Trump coming back and countering. It'd be really interesting to see if that's what we have in store for 2024.
That will be interesting, and interesting to see if Biden continues to go down this path, because I don't think that they got the response that they were looking for. They thought this was going to be, as they say, a positive speech, and no one took it that way. Also, many reporters and people on the left as well. Well, our next guest is the perfect person to talk to about both of these speeches, Sean. He switched political parties back in 2019 after voting against both articles of impeachment on then President Trump. Let's welcome in New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew. Congressman, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us on Labor Day. So Biden really going for it last week, calling Trump by name 3 times. We have really not heard him say Trump's name before he says the other guy. Then the timing of these speeches was perfect. Trump fired back at him over the weekend. We are just 64 days away from the midterms right now. What is happening right now? Is this helpful for the midterms?
Well, let me say this. I do think it's helpful for us. I think it's helpful for Republicans. But what a bizarre, weird speech that was that Biden gave. I mean, literally with that blood red background, And it was literally almost frightening. They really, if they want to save some money, one thing they can do is maybe sell it to a movie set somewhere, and they can use it for an intro to, Dracula movies and Frankenstein movies, because that was scary. Biden's scary. The set was scary. What he said was scary. Here's a man that was supposed to be trying to bring America together, make us whole again, make us better again. All the things he talked about doing, and he lied about every one of them. He is constantly splitting apart the country. And what I say to people all the time when I speak, I say, the first thing I say to them, I want everybody in this room to know they're good people, they're good Americans, they're worthy, and not to be treated that way. That was awful. And I think there's a backlash to it. I don't think people like it. On the other hand, and by the way, he didn't speak at all about the problems, didn't speak about the border, didn't speak about fentanyl, didn't speak about what's happening with crime rates in our police, didn't speak how we're letting literally criminals in and out with 20 and 30, 40 priors, and we just let it go. Didn't speak about our energy picture and how we've destroyed our energy. Didn't speak about the failure in Afghanistan. Let me tell you, he's got material. He's got plenty to talk about, and he should talk about it to try to redeem himself in some way. But what, on the other hand, happened with the Trump speech, he talked about making America great again as a good thing. There's nothing wrong with MAGA. There's nothing wrong with the words, make America great again. On my signs and in my literature, I say, keep America strong or make America strong. We want to be strong. We want to be great. We want to be number one. And that is not what our current president wants, and it showed.
Yeah, I'm with you on the whole speech, the backdrop. I mean, the Marines being behind him, the red background. I got to wonder, I mean, his communications staff definitely failed him on this, because we know it's not like he actually had anything to do with it. I do want to switch gears with you, because I know there's an issue that you've talked about that, frankly, I don't think a lot of people fully appreciate. California announced that they're going to ban all gas-powered cars. Now, here's the catch. California's always been wackadoodle on the far left. They've done some crazy stuff. But here's the kicker. This effort that they're doing, I think it's called the Flex Alert, which goes, it's now affecting, they're telling everyone, don't use your electric cars because they've got electricity problems, right? So they're now struggling with this. They're telling people, don't use your electric car because they're dealing with this massive outages, right? Here's the problem. 12 other states, or 13 other states, including New Jersey, Virginia, all these other states have tethered themselves to California's ruling, right?
Exactly. And what really bothers me about that, well, first of all, there's so much that bothers me about it. Right from the get-go, these governors are not dictators. I know they think they are, and they should just tell us exactly what we should do and that we must have electric cars. It hasn't been proven to me at the end of the day that that's exactly going to be the right way to go, especially when we're going to mandate it for everyone. We are going to be so beholden to the Chinese, these rare earth elements that we need. We're going to be short of them. We're going to have problems. They're going to be very expensive. So maybe the government will subsidize it. The government subsidizes it, which is the wrong thing to do. Then we're even going to have more inflation problems. Then on top of it all, many states don't have the electric grid for it, particularly these blue states and left-wing areas where they're mandating that, say, by 2035, everybody has to be all electric because they say so, because they're telling you to do it, because you've got to take orders from them. And yet, at the same time, though, it's not only the dictatorial attitude, it's the stupidity of it. You don't have the power. You're not able to supply it. You're going to have all kinds of problems. Your grid is not up to par. How about we get an electric grid that's up to par? How about we have an energy policy that is based upon where we're strong in natural gas and other areas in oil, and we also look at some renewables at the same time, but in an intelligent, methodical way where we go through a process. This is stupidity magnified.
So your state, New Jersey, is one of the 12 states that follows California's rule. Do your constituents know this is going to affect them?
No, they don't. Everything is kept inside. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for folks like you and a couple of others out there, the legacy